Hey guys, today we have Dan Kellner here. Dan Kellner is the head coach of Brooklyn Bridge Fencing Club. He was leading the US men's foil team to the fourth place with a victory against Germany, as far as I remember. And he, as a coach, he had athletes like Race Imboden and is currently also working with Marcus Mepstead in New York. Please welcome with me Dan Kellner. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you give us a short introduction about your fencing career and about your career as a coach, maybe?
Sure. Well, I picked up a foil for the first time when I was 13. And then I started taking fencing lessons around 15, turning 16.
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky at the time because the Soviet Union had fallen. And the coach of my school was connected with fencing. He's an armorer. He was the head armorer at the Budapest World Championships in 2019. He's
Mm-hmm.
on the FIE semi-commission. So even though he was my high school fencing coach, he was very connected with international fencing. And
Mm-hmm.
he heard that this coach, Simon Gershon, had just come into the country from the former Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
He saw I had some talent, and he sent me to go work with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my coach for the rest of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I started taking lessons at around 15, I realized I wanted to be on an Olympic team.
Mm-hmm.
I really had no idea what that meant and what it took, but I realized I was slowly like engineering my life for this goal. It was one of the first things that really, really inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate that I had a great coach. I was very fortunate that I had some talent in whatever that you want to define that in fencing as
Mm-hmm.
just being able to put the light on when you needed to. And then I was also fortunate that my parents could support me in my fencing, because in the US, the system is very different and you have to pay for almost everything yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And because my parents were paying for everything, and I think I was a hard worker in general, that I just really dedicated myself to wanting to be good at this, because I really wanted to be good at sports, and I was really bad at all of them. I love sports. I tried a lot of them, but I was really
Mm-hmm.
bad at them until I found fencing and something,
Mm-hmm.
and it just spoke to me. And I just, no matter what I wanted to do, I just wanted to fence.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you mentioned, I was on an Olympic team in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
For the US, we were ranked 7th going into the competition, and we
Mm-hmm.
drew Germany, the number 2 seed, and we upset them. And it was the highest US finish at the Olympics in 56 years
Mm-hmm.
for men's foil. So we were sort of the start of the rise of American foil.
Mm-hmm.
My career ended in 2006 due to injuries. I had wear and tear injuries on my elbow and my knee. We didn't take care of ourselves as well as the athletes do nowadays, and that I think that contributed. I did cross training, I did work out, but we weren't as into it as the athletes nowadays, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a really great thing that they are. So after my injuries, I recovered from my injuries. I realized I spent 2 years on the couch doing nothing, basically.
Okay.
Just recovering from my injuries because I had 2 surgeries. And when I was done, I realized I really missed fencing. So I found a fencing club near me in Brooklyn where I was living. I started fencing for fun a little bit, started coaching for fun a little bit. And then after about 2 years at that club, I left and started my own club, which is Brooklyn Bridge Fencing, and that was 10 years ago. And I didn't think I would love coaching as much as I did. I think I told this other people that I think I love coaching more than I love competing, because you just get to see athletes develop. You get a chance at multiple victories, not just a victory for yourself. And that dopamine hit is much higher than just winning yourself, because you could have multiple students do well. So I really like that. And I think I think I knew I could be a good coach because I was a good fencer. And I knew what it took to be successful, but at the same time, I was a good fencer. Don't get me wrong. I was top 16 in the world. I'm super proud of that because I was only the second American foil fencer to ever be top 16 in the world. But there was another level above me. I wasn't a Sanzo. I wasn't a Cassara, a Vani, like all like great fencers of my generation that I saw. A Golubitsky, Cherioni was still fencing, Elvis Gregory, the Cubans. There was a level above me. But I got to where I was by working hard and being smart. I wasn't the best athlete. I started fencing late, but because of those, let's say, deficiencies in my athletic character, it taught me how to learn the game in a different way, because fencing is all about maximizing your strengths and minimizing your opponent's strengths, right? So maybe I wasn't the fastest, the strongest, the biggest, the most athletic, but I had, I like to say I had like great technique, great tactics, and I was a smart fencer. And because of that, my job became easier as a coach because I just wanted to teach my kids the way I think about fencing. Right. It wasn't dependent on being the fastest and the strongest. And yeah, and I think the reason I'm a good fencing coach now is because I'm just a fencing nerd. I love fencing. I'll talk to anybody about fencing anytime. If they want to listen to me talk about fencing, I will talk about fencing. And I love it. And I think that's that curiosity, that investigation of the sport, of what you can always be doing better, doing different with the trends that's going on. I think that just kind of keeps pushing me to do better. I'm sorry if I talked on for a while.
There was already so much input here because we basically wanted to ask you today what you think it requires for becoming a successful fencer. And I mean, you were mentioning already like hard work, then maybe the curiosity you were mentioning as well.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Like I love fencing. Well, one of the things that always struck me is I would notice at the fencing club that I fenced at that, like, when it was somebody's birthday, they wouldn't show up to the fencing club because their birthday was special and they weren't going to fence on their birthday. On my birthday, I would go fencing, and people would be like, "Why are you here at the club? It's your birthday. Why are you fencing?" It's like, well, it's my birthday. I get to do whatever I want. I get to do whatever I love on my birthday, and I love fencing. So of course I'm going to go to fencing. Do you know what I mean? And it was a real journey because the first I tried out for the Olympics in 2000, and I didn't make it. And before that, I had been on 3 senior U.S. national teams. And I thought that making the Olympics would just be the next step in my career. And I thought I could do the same amount of work to make the Olympics. Nobody told me, I didn't have any role models. Nobody told me how much harder making an Olympics was than just making the world team, right? So in 2000, I didn't make the Olympics. And so I retired for a year. And when I came back, I took it slowly, but then I had that fire again, that passion to be a top level fencer. And I really spent some time looking at my life and looking at the things I did right from the quadrennial before and looking at the things that I did wrong. And I really made a concerted effort to fix those mistakes so I could achieve my dream of being on an Olympic team. And I think a lot of people who don't have the success they want, they don't realize that there's a difference between what they're willing to do to succeed and then what they actually have to do to succeed, right? It takes a lot of introspection to look at a failure and be like, this is my fault. A lot of people, when they fail, they don't blame themselves. They blame somebody else. But if you can take a good, hard look at yourself and analyze what you did wrong and what you need to change and what you're responsible for, it becomes very, very empowering. And then if you if you try again and fail, at least you can say, I did everything I could in my power to make that come true, and there's no excuses. But I think a lot of people don't do everything they have to. That way, in case they do fail, they can say, well, I didn't do everything I needed to do. I didn't really try anyway, because they're actually afraid of that true failure and putting themselves everything into what they're doing. I really think you need to have that self-analysis, just in the same way where you analyze a bout that you won or you lost. You're going to have done, unless you get just completely destroyed, there's going to be things you've done well and things you've done poorly, and then you've got to build on that to make yourself a better fencer. It's the same thing.
You were working you were and you are working with world-class athletes. Is this mindset that you were explaining now something that you teach them and also younger kids?
Yeah. I mean, we're always talking about a growth mindset, and that there's no medals for practice, and it doesn't matter who you beat in practice, because there's no rankings, there's no medals. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. You're only as good as your results say you are. Does that make sense? And I think a lot of people confuse that. And in the club, we really try to work with the fencers to subjugate their egos, in the sense that if you're fencing somebody at the club that you know you can beat and you're better than, and they get a touch on you, you should not act hurt, insulted. You should try to thank that person, because they pointed out a weakness that then you can fix and you can get better. You need a partner in fencing to get better. And you have to realize that not every time if you get hit in a tournament, fine, take it personally. But in practice, just work on what you need to work on. Marcus always talks about this, and my other fencers is like, we want the older fencers to fence with the younger fencers, because when you learn a new action, it's just not going to work on the best athletes right away. You got to work on it with the younger fencers, the ones that aren't so good, and then bring it to the next level of fencer club, next level of fencer, until it works at the best level. And if you get hit during that, then it just means you need more practice on it. It doesn't mean that you're a bad fencer. It doesn't mean that you're any worse than you were. You shouldn't judge yourself by how you fence at practice. If that makes sense.
What do you think? How important is, because in US it's very different, for example, to Russia, where the whole national team is together, right? Over weeks, over months. What do you think? How important is to have on a daily, weekly basis very strong, let's say, opponents in training?
It's definitely helpful. I'm not gonna lie, but there's been plenty of examples the world over where a country has produced one or two great fencers without a strong national team around them to practice. I mean, you've got like João Gomes of Portugal when I fenced. Tomer Orr was number 5 in the world. You got Cedric Goey from Belgium, who was number 7. I mean, there's a fairly long list, and you can substitute those by having great fencers all the time, by if you have to travel for a camp or go to another club. Like Marcus goes to Fencers Club before COVID. Marcus was going to Fencers Club once a week, right? Because he would spend and people would come from other clubs to my club to fence. So he would spend, and other fencers would spend a few days or so working on actions at the club, maybe not the best level, but then after you're working on it for a week, you take it to the better fencers that you have, get the feedback, what worked, what didn't, and then just keep tweaking.
So it's
so I think if you can get bouting, I think if you can get high level bouting once or twice a week, you can really do something with it. I don't think it needs to. I mean, the more you have it, great. But I think you can get away with like if you can have competent fencing the rest of the week and you can get high level bouts twice a week, you'll be pretty good.
Okay. And so what basically the interview I was framing under success is not a coincidence. And I mean, you have big success also as a coach, obviously, with Race Imboden ranked #1, the first US fencer who won the World Cup, with Marcus Mepstead now on the World Championships with a second place. What were the first things you have been working with these guys on? What do you think?
The first thing I worked with them on was just introducing them to my concepts of fencing and how I talk about fencing. And it's funny. Maybe you've seen the T-shirt, the white T-shirt with the mask in the middle and all the sayings. That's I'm giving you my secrets on that T-shirt. If I can get my students to understand those concepts, point first, start slow, finish fast, give your arm, lock it down, which means to like concentrate and really like be in the moment. And then I've got some other things. I'd say I've got about six rules or so that are the concepts of my fencing. And if you stay within those concepts, and it's a very big field that these concepts circle, you can be a successful fencer. Like I've said to people, there's different schools of fencing. We've got Russian, we've got Italian, we've got German, we've got French, we've now got the American, you name it. Every country has been successful at fencing. So there's no one way to be a successful fencer, but all those styles, all those schools of fencing fit within an acceptable range of motion. And fencing supports that range of motion, but it's if you travel outside of that acceptable range of motion, that's where things start to go wrong. And the thing about fencing, it's very easy to get outside those ranges, right? Because what the two things from beginner level to Olympic that coaches say are three things: bend your knees, slow down, and go with your point first. You've been hearing that since you were 8 years old.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't change. It just gets harder to do the better you get at it.
Right.
And yeah.
All right. So it's following these 6 rules and in a big range of.
Yeah, it's not. They're not even real rules. I call it like a fence, a fence around your fencing, and just stay within the fence, and you'll be fine.
As a sort of structure for your athletes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not rigid. It's always changing. It's always flexing. It's always growing and shrinking. It's just you do what the moment requires.
Right. Right. So, and the very last question is, how can people get in touch with you if they want, to train with you? If you maybe have camps. I mean, now they are postponed. I know that.
Right. Yeah. Right now we're kind of in a holding pattern. Hopefully we'll have camps for the club in July. But if anybody's interested in talking to me or coming to Brooklyn Bridge for lessons once we reopen fully, you can always go to the website brooklynbridgefencing.com or email info at Brooklyn Bridge Fencing, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with you.
Right. You will find these information, of course, on our Facebook page, on all the posts, and also on our website. We will link there so that you can get in touch with Dan.
Yeah. About his but unfortunately, right now, the state of the U.S., I don't know. I'm hoping we'll be back in the club in the middle of July for some limited activities, but not exactly holding my breath. But I want to be cautiously optimistic.
All right. So Dan, thank you very much for giving us this great interview.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
It was such a big thing. Yeah, thank you very much, and all the best in the COVID time that you're close.
Thank you, and I hope we get to see each other soon in person at a tournament. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
That would be great. No?
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you later. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.